Democratic Party. I'm also joined from Detroit by Erol Morkoc, who's from the political organisation Republicans Overseas. To you firstly then, Erol, do you think President Trump was responsible for inciting the riot at the Capitol?
No, I don't think he was directly responsible. I think the entire political climate that has been going on in the United States for the last 4 years, but arguably we can go back 20 or 30, eventually built to this moment. It was a moment of great unfortunate shame for our country to see that happen in the Capitol, and something that the president, myself, and the entire Republican Party fully condemn. So to answer your question directly, no, we don't think he was responsible. We think that he's definitely with the rest of us in putting down that shameful act at the Capitol by people who do not represent our party.
So where next then, Erol? Because the Republicans have lost the White House, control the Senate. The Democrats continue to control Congress. Where does the party go now?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, we have to look at what's positive here. And the GOP did pick up seats in the House. The majority of our party is firmly behind the president. We had an increase in Latino support in the Republican Party. Victories in Ohio and Florida, and losing the election, that hadn't happened in about 60 years. So there's a lot of interesting metrics. We picked up 16 million more votes. So right now it's going to be a really big soul-searching moment for the Republican Party to go back into itself, make sure that our ground game is strong, and look forward till 2022, because elections have consequences. And much kudos to our Democrat opponents here who won a fair and square election. So now we're going to have to go and rebuild from the inside. But we're not in a very bad place. We're just outside the yardage line. So it should be a robust rebuilding process.
Well, Bill, on that, senior Democrats are now putting their impeachment plans in place. President Trump is going in a few days anyway. Is there any point in going through all that?
Well, there's a concern, actually, about what could happen with this unpredictable president over the next 12 days that we have left. And I think there's also the desire to illustrate that you cannot, with impunity, do what this president has done. I mean, he did incite that movement up on the Hill. He did express regret, but there are two Donald Trumps, There's the one that we see when he's just ad-libbing and speaking his own mind, and there's the teleprompter Donald Trump. Well, we heard the real Donald Trump on Wednesday when he said, "Those are nice people, I love them." And then we heard the teleprompter Trump yesterday give a condemnation, a very routine and robotic kind of condemnation of what actually had happened. So I think the Republicans really have a difficult time. You have a number of principled Republicans who want to reestablish the party on its rather traditional lines and to get beyond Trump. People like the Secretary of State in Georgia, for example, or Mike Rogers, the former Intelligence Committee chair from the House from Michigan. You have those kind of people. But you also have a large swathe of the Republican electorate who bought into the lies that they were told by Donald Trump over the last 4 years, and repeated by friendly media and by people like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley. You got those people. They can be brought back into a regenerated Republican Party. But you've got the extreme groups like the Proud Boys and the QAnon and the conspiracy theorists and all the rest, who were the ones who actually invaded the Capitol and misled so many of the followers of Trump. The Democratic Party has its own divisions, and we have our own problems of sticking together to try to rebuild the nation, to try to heal the nation. I think Joe Biden is perfectly placed in temperament and experience to accomplish that and to try to repair some of the damage that Ann Applebaum was referring to earlier in our relationships around the world.
Well, Bill, Joe Biden, he's going to be president in a few days' time. He's got a good mandate now because he can, in theory, get his own way in the Senate and Congress. But I suppose the first thing he will have to do is try and bring the country together before he can think about getting his programme for government in place.
That's true, and I think that's one of the reasons he's playing the role that he is and taking the route that he is. He's not edging on the forces in Congress that seek to hold this president account, but rather he's focusing on what the task that he will face when he comes into office. The problem with impeachment is that, yes, it can pass the House. It will pass the House, I think, but the Senate is a different matter. You would have to have 17 votes from Republicans in the Senate to convict. And I just don't think that's likely to happen. But it does force individuals in the House and the Senate to take a stand, especially those who would aspire to be president 2024. It also has the prospect, if it is accurate, as some constitutional scholars argue, that you can impeach or hold the trial after a term has ended. It wouldn't remove Trump from office, but it could very well bar him from any subsequent effort to achieve office in the federal system.
Errol, as Joe Biden begins his term in office, is there not a real danger now that there will be a serious split in the Republican Party? You've got like the moderate voices, the sort of John McCain type people, versus the much more hard right wing Trump supporters. Which side is going to win out here?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I would actually, go a step farther and say there's almost 4 political parties in the United States right now, 2 inside our party and 2 inside the Democrat Party. As far as how that's going to work out, you're going to see a lot of people start to get in line behind more conservative, traditional conservative values. But on the other side, there's a lot of transparency on our side of the ticket, so a lot of people come out and voice their opinion, and people cycle in and out a little bit more during these down years, so it's going to be a little bit of trial and error. But I think as in any organizational body, that sort of push and pull is healthy, and it shows that it's a viable living organism that has internal dialogue and tries to come to a new consensus. And as Donald Trump is still probably our strongest candidate going into 2024, I think that there's going to be a lot of sort of doubling down on the great messages and the great leadership that he gave in those 4 years. And
so you think he should be standing again for president in 4 years' time, Donald Trump?
I think he will be. I think that's just the way the metrics of a U.S. election system goes. I don't know exactly who would step up to challenge him within the party. Right now, there wouldn't be anybody who any strategist could clearly define. I mean, this is a man who won 75 million votes in the United States of America. It's only eclipsed by Mr. Biden's 80-some million. So, I mean, it's not really if I want him to. It's just more of the metrics of how the election process works. He's a sitting president right now. He will be a former president as when he's in a few days, and he's still going to be very active. You're going to have a situation maybe a little bit like Gerald Ford, where they wondered if he would continue and whatnot. People asked him. So we'll see. It's going to be up to Donald Trump, though. He's going to be a little bit older. He's a billionaire. He's a very eccentric fellow. Who knows what he wants to do?
Well, Bill, is that a problem for the Democrats? Because people are wondering if Joe Biden will actually seek a second term in office.
Well, I think that's certainly an unknown and something that we do not know and cannot know. A lot will depend upon what happens during the course of the 4 years and how he holds up over the 4 years. The presidency is a draining experience, but I think he has had enough experience and enough willingness, as he's shown when he was in the Senate and when he was vice president, to draw strong staff people around him so to lighten that load a bit. So it may not be quite as draining on him as it might have been on people who are new to the system and new to the position. But I think a lot depends, too, upon what happens in the Republican Party. If you have, as you had last time, a field of 16 or 20 or whatever it was against one who has a solid base of about a third of the party, then that person, if it were Trump or someone else, is going to win. But if the dynamic is like it was in the Democratic Party this time, where very quickly the forces in the party narrow down to one person to oppose the person from the further extreme position in the party, then there's a chance, as Biden did with Sanders, there is a chance for the more moderate candidate to prevail. And I suspect that that's the dynamic that we're going to see moving forward with the Republicans.
OK, well, thank you to you both. We'll see what the next 4 years bring. That's Bill Barnard there from Democrats Abroad UK and Erol Morkoc from Republicans Overseas.